So, you played all the Diablo 3 you can stand, and your mouse hand isn't quite in a cast yet? Feel like killing even more hordes of bad guys by clicking on them and grabbing their loot when their hit points run out? I may have the solution for you. Neocore Games, out of Budapest, has dusted off the legend of Dracula and his legendary nemesis Van Helsing and used them as the basis for a rollicking new action RPG franchise. Hi, I'm Ray Ivey for Just Adventure. In the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing games for Mac and PC, you play as the son of legendary vampire hunter Abraham Van Helsing. Sorry, the game won't let you play as his daughter. Why not? It's 2014. Anyway, the games don't take place in the actual Dracula universe, however. The creators, the studio Neocore, have concocted an alternate history steampunk Eastern European land called Borgovia. In this creepy landscape, a bizarre type of science has arisen, and the misuse of its powers has turned the already fearsome vampires and werewolves of the region into even more bizarre and dangerous creatures. What's more, the weird science I'm talking about is actually your dad's fault. Awkward. But we'll let that go for now. Quick review disclaimer. You're probably going to get sick of me referring to Diablo in this piece, but it's really unavoidable. This series is frankly and unapologetically a Diablo clone, and you've just got to talk about it as such. Also, it's best to consider these two games, The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing and The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 2, as two parts of one game, like Siberia or the recent two-part Broken Sword game. In the original version of the first game, you only had access to one character type, the Hunter. The Hunter fights with guns and swords. He's very traditional. However, in subsequent patches, and in the game's current release form on Steam, there are two additional classes. The Thaumaturge, the game's answer to a mage, and the Arcane Mechanic, a sort of engineer who fights with grenades and nasty little robots. Character creation was extremely simple, as I only had to name my character. After a short prelude that tossed a lot of backstory at me, I found myself running along the countryside and thinking, damn, this is pretty. And the game truly is a feast for the eyes. It's like the designers of Diablo 3 took a couple of Xanax and allowed themselves to have some fun with the game environments. You have a companion with you on the journey, a ghost named Katarina. She's a mouthy thing who fights alongside you and likes to make lots of sarcastic comments all the time. I particularly enjoyed how bent she would get whenever I give money to beggars. Like, I don't know, what's a ghost going to do with money? This pastoral prelude serves as a way for you to get used to how your particular class smites the bad guys. It's mechanically quite simple, you know, like that game that starts with a D. Soon you begin to gain levels, as you do in these kinds of games, and this is where the fun, theoretically at least, begins. I actually felt pretty aimless and uninformed as I stumbled through the various skill trees. It wasn't always obvious to me what exactly I needed to do to gain access to an attractive skill. By the end of the game, I wasn't particularly happy with my build at all. Now, this may just simply have been because I'm lame, but let's face it, I've played lots of games like this before. I wish the game had given me a bit more feedback on this system so I could have felt a bit more invested in how I had invested my points. At least you can pay to reassign the points. In addition to these skill points, you also get to allocate a few stat points each time you level. These were much less mysterious, as the interface was nice and clear about what each stat did for you. Standard things like body, dexterity, luck, things like that. Every so often, you'd also get to select a perk. These were fun and helped make your character your own. One nice touch is that you also get to level up your ghostly companion, Katarina, as well. The game is fun, pretty, and short. So it might come as a surprise to hear that it can also become tedious. On several of the maps, the swarms of enemies were so ludicrously numerous that it became almost comically frustrating. While all Diablo clones have thin stories, when you're spending hour after hour pounding away at the same types of enemies over and over, your patience with the thin story grows, well, thin. I kept trying to just focus on the pretty scenery. It didn't help that I never felt like I knew what I was doing when I was allocating my skill points. I also never really understood the crafting system. The game did a piss poor job of explaining it to me. Or maybe I'm just stupid. Both things could be true. And anyway, after the last boss battle, the game ends abruptly. Very abruptly. Like, oh, goodness, that's the credits rolling. I mean, this is the most abrupt ending I've seen since Evita on Broadway. Anyway, on to... The second game also starts with lots of choices for what character you want to play the game with. You have the same three classes, the Hunter, the Thaumaturge, and the Arcane Mechanic, but you can import your saved character from the first game, you can start a new character, you can even choose one of the pre-made characters that they give you. In addition, you can choose to start the game at level 1 or play a more advanced game in which your character begins at level 30. If you make that choice and don't choose a pre-made character, you get to spend all of the points accumulated by level 30 in perks, attributes, and skills, which is awesome. This is how I chose to play the game, and it was really nice to be able to spend all of those points as I saw fit. I also discarded the Arcane Mechanic, which I just did not enjoy as a class in the first game, with his wimpy little grenades. I felt like all I did in the game was run away from enemies. So this time I played the Hunter with an absolutely focused melee build, and I was much happier with it. In addition, starting at level 30 has two more consequences. Your enemies are tougher naturally from the very beginning, but it also means that you have a better chance of getting all the way down those skill trees to those super deluxe perks and tricks and auras that require so many points that you'd never get at if you were starting at level 1. I figured the extra tough enemies were worth it. The biggest difference between the first and the second game is the fact that there's a lot more to do in the sequel than the simple, straightforward hack and slash that the first game almost entirely consists of. Now, to be sure, there's a ton of that in the second game as well, but it also includes 3 new gameplay modes that are all really fun. First, there's a series of tower defense challenges. Now, I'm no tower defense game expert. I haven't finished Plants vs. Zombies 2 yet, but you don't have to be a pro to enjoy and succeed at these levels. The in-game tutorials are effective, and the challenges are actually lots of fun. Next, you have several generals you get to develop and send out on missions of their own. These leaders gain levels, and you even have rudimentary but satisfying choices about their skill progression. This minigame also comes with effective on-screen tutorials, and it's lots of fun. My favorite among the new activities, however, has to be the Chimera. In Act 2, you get this summonable and adorably deadly pet. You get to develop him by sending him to hunt on his own, and when he returns from these hunting missions, he obligingly fetches you potentially valuable items and, more importantly, levels himself up. You also have to keep him fed. When you don't have Fluffy, and yes, that's really his name, out on solo hunting missions, he can join you in battle. The more you level him up, the more hit points he has, and the longer he'll stay summoned and kill bad guys with you. He's a very welcome addition to the hectic late-game battles. Just don't forget to keep him fed or he won't come help. Despite the dark, steampunk setting of the game, the tone isn't all doom and gloom. Like I said earlier, your ghost companion is forever making wisecracks, and the game likes to throw in silly references to other games, like the time when I came upon the Half-Life logo emblazoned on some random wall. My biggest gripe with the second game is how quests sometimes simply evaporate. At one point I had a very intriguing quest to go liberate a secret prisoner holding area, but the huge crowd of creatures were just too much for me. I just kept getting my head handed to me. So I decided to hold on to the key, it was supposed to open all the cells, and just go do other things and beef up a bit. So when I felt like I'd leveled enough, I went back to the location. All the bad guys had respawned. It was no problem. I was able to cut them down this time, killed them all. And then to my horror, I realized the key I had so carefully saved did not open a single cell. There were prisoners in there waiting for me to free them. There were glowing treasure chests behind bars, just all waiting for the release that my key could provide. But no go. Then I realized, oh yeah, and the quest had disappeared from my quest log, so no wonder the key wouldn't work. There was no warning that this was going to happen. It wasn't even at a chapter break. This was very frustrating, very annoying, and what's worse, inelegant game design, which is one of the worst things that I can say about a game. This annoying quest evaporation can also happen when you finish chapters of the game, of which the game has 3. I don't mind discrete chapters in a game, but there's no reason not to give the players a warning. You're about to complete Chapter 1. Make sure you have no unfinished business before clicking Proceed. I've seen this done effectively in lots of games. But in Van Helsing 2, you just get a screen telling you, hey, you've completed the chapter. And by then it's too late to say, hey, wait a minute, I need to go find those extra bombs I needed for the Collect a Bomb quest. In terms of character development, I had a much better time in the second game than I did in the first. This time around I played, as I mentioned, as the melee-focused hunter. This felt like a much more appropriate choice for this game than the puny, squishy, grenade-lobbing arcane mechanic from the first game. I had a better time in the skill tree as well. My choices seemed more meaningful and satisfying and comprehensible. Overall, I had a great time playing both games. Sure, there were times when the sheer overwhelming number of enemies just felt excessive and silly, and the final encounter of the second game ends up as a disappointment for reasons I don't really want to spoil. But overall, the 2-part Van Helsing saga does a good job of providing what an action role-playing game is supposed to provide. Really attractive environments with lots of enemies to kill. My favorite encounter in either game was the boss battle at the end of Act 2 of the sequel. While it was very lengthy and very difficult, I felt like the feedback I was getting from the game was fair and informative, and by the time I finally succeeded, it was very satisfying indeed. Now, not everything in the game is up to that level, but a lot of it is, and what's not is close enough. So if you're done with Diablo, if you've finished Borderlands, if you've conquered Torchlight, if you've had enough of Path of Exile, you could do a lot worse than to jump into the gorgeous and rowdy world of the incredible adventures of Van Helsing. Grade? A solid B. Thanks for watching, and look for more video reviews soon on justadventure.com.